Different types of text deliver different kinds of information and purpose. Learning how ideas are presented in different text types can be a very useful means to gain comprehension. Being familiar with the structure of a text not only helps reader anticipate the information, thus be more cognitively ready to read the following sections, but also prepares readers to write better. Hello everyone, welcome to Module 7. We will still be learning about patterns of organization, but in this module, we will focus on the progression of different text types. The number of text types are numerous depending on the social function that it aims to perform, and we will not be able to discuss all of them in this module. Only three kinds of text types progressions are presented here: progression in narrative text, argumentative essays, and news. The three, I think, are among the most commonly encountered texts in our daily life. So let's begin from narrative. Narrative structure is also commonly referred to as story or plotline. It is the framework used by an author to tell a story. It describes how the author reveals the plot to the reader. In a Harry Potter story, for example, the plot revolves around a single question: will Harry Potter defeat Voldemort? To answer the core question, the author develops a series of events in such a way to keep the readers entertained. The events are arranged in the order, intensity, dynamic, and pace that can stir up the reader's emotions. This is why the narrative structure is often considered as arcs, because a story rises and falls, creating an arc shape. In the simplest way, an arc is developed following these stages. The first is exposition. This is also referred to as orientation. At this initial stage, the author introduces the characters, establishes the setting, and presents primary conflict. And then, rising action. This is also referred to as complication. The second stage is where the author introduces the primary conflict and sets the story in motion. The following events are usually getting more and more complicated than the previous. At this stage, tension or excitement is built. Next, climax. This is the point at which the tension or conflict is the most intense. It is the turning point of a story, and at this stage, readers are usually most curious about what's next. Then we have falling action. In this stage, the conflict or tension bit by bit subsides as explanation of how the problem is resolved are revealed. And finally, resolution. This is when the problem or conflict ends. At this point, I would like you to find and read short stories of your favorite and see if you could identify the arc structure of the story. Mark at which part of the problem or problems gets intensified and at which point it subsides. If you don't have any site or narrative in mind, how about visiting Graded Reading at British Council website? You will have a range of stories at different levels that I believe you will enjoy reading. Okay, now let's move on to the second type, that is argumentative. An argumentative essay is commonly found in academic contexts. It is an essay in which an author presents both sides of an argument or issue. The main purpose of an argumentative essay is to inform rather than convince and should not be confused with a persuasive essay. An argumentative essay falls within the discussion text types, while a persuasive essay commonly belongs to an exposition type. In an argumentative essay, the author may present arguments equally or support one in favor of others. Regardless, the thesis must include all of the primary points and counterpoints that will appear in the essay. It is almost like a debate with oneself. The elements of an argumentative essay are: first, position. It is the author standing on an issue. It states the side of the argument that the author takes. Then we have evidence. It is the piece of information or fact that the author uses to support his arguments. Evidence often takes form in references or citations. Another element is counterargument. It is the opposing argument from the one that the author takes side on. So after stating these counterarguments, the author usually states why they are false, weak, or ineffective by presenting further evidence. The three elements can be arranged in various ways, but the most common one is what we call as the classical approach. An argumentative essay that is delivered through this approach progresses in this order. So at the beginning, we have the introduction. This stage is also called issue. It is when the author introduces the central issue for the argument. At this stage, often the author provides background of the issue. This background may be in the form of study findings or observation that build the case or importance of the issue. Next, main argument. It is also referred to as supporting points, either arguments for or against. This is when the author states her or his standing toward the issue. Firm statement of the side of the argument that the author takes is made at this point. After stating the main arguments, an argumentative essay will proceed to refutation. At this stage, which is also called a contrast or alternate point of view, the author will present the opposing argument or point of view. These contrast views are then refuted, that is, ideas are encountered and weaknesses are highlighted by presenting more evidence to support the main argument. Finally, we have conclusion. At this stage, all main arguments are presented and lead to the conclusion or solution. To see how this stages in an argumentative essay, please read the handout. An example is provided for you. Alright, the last text type that we are going to talk about is news. The news structure can be divided into five main sections, which include the headline, byline, the lead, the body, and the tail. These sections are structured in the pattern of an inverted pyramid. In this inverted pyramid pattern, the most important part or information is put first. As the news progresses, the information presented becomes less and less important. It means the information placed last is usually the least important. In the old days, when printed newspapers were the major source of information, journalists faced an issue with the limited space or column in the paper. What happened is, instead of editing the news article draft, the editor of a newspaper would usually directly cut the part near the end of the news whenever it did not meet the available space. Since the writing of the news follows the inverted pyramid, the reader still maintained to get the information part that is important, that is placed at the top. Okay, now let's take a look at the components of a news. Let's begin from the headline. The headline functions to grab the reader's attention while successfully summarizing the main point of the article. For those reasons, the headline is usually short and snappy and eye catching. And then we have the byline. The byline functions to tell the readers who the article is by, what their job role is, and how to find more of their content. Critical readers usually pay attention to this part as part of their effort to ensure the credibility or trustworthiness of the article. Next element, the lead. This is the most important part of a news. It is also referred to as orientation. It is usually one paragraph long and it is filled with concise and condensed information. Answers to as many as possible basic journalistic questions are presented in this section. Because of the density of the information, reading this part only is generally sufficient to understand what the news is about. Often, a reader shifts or moves on to the next news that catches their attention after they finish reading the lead. Next up, the body. The body includes lots of information that elaborates what has been mentioned in the lead. But unlike the lead, the body consists of several paragraphs depending on the availability of the space and the complexity of details of information. The last is the tail. The tail includes the least important information and functions to sum up the events. In many cases, this tail is optional. News often stops at the detail presented in the body section. Follow the link in the handout or find any news on the web on your own and read it carefully. Learn the progression of information in the news that you read, and see if you could identify which part is which based on what you have learned from this video. Although only three kinds of text and their progression are presented in this module, it does not mean that the other text types do not have patterns of progression or structure. Pay close attention to the text that you read. Identify the main points delivered in each paragraph, and you will notice that similar texts or texts that have the same goal or purpose are presented in similar structure. For example, if you pay attention to a movie, book, or a product review, you will notice that it usually begins with the introduction or description of the item being reviewed, followed by its evaluation. Either it's a good or bad evaluation. And then you will usually find the interpretation and finally the conclusion of the review that commonly restates the evaluation and the main reasons for saying if the movie, book, or product is good or bad. Okay everyone, this is the end of module 7 video. I'll see you again in the next module. Bye!